The shift in our neighborhood's atmosphere was palpable the moment Karen took charge. It wasn't a ceremonious election or a gradual assumption of leadership. It was a coup, a quiet declaration that hung in the air like a storm cloud. One Tuesday evening, during what was supposed to be a routine homeowners association meeting, Karen simply announced her new role. No ballots, no nominations, just a firm, unwavering statement that she was now in control. The room, typically filled with the murmur of polite discourse, fell into a stunned silence. It was as if we were all collectively holding our breath, unsure of what this sudden power grab meant for our once tranquil community. Karen's presence had always been distinctive. There was an air of meticulousness about her, a rigidness that bordered on obsessive. Her garden was a testament to this. Every blade of grass perfectly aligned, every flower precisely pruned. But this attention to detail, admirable in its own right, extended far beyond her property lines. It seeped into the very fabric of our neighborhood, transforming our relaxed, easygoing community into a place where every action felt scrutinized. The initial signs were subtle. A new set of bylaws posted on the community bulletin board, detailing everything from permissible fence heights to the precise shade of exterior paint. Then came the emails, lengthy missives detailing perceived infractions, each one signed with Karen's name in a bold, unwavering font. It was as if she had appointed herself the arbiter of all things, the sole judge of what was acceptable in our little corner of the world. But beneath this veneer of control, there was something else, a hint of vulnerability that flickered in her eyes when she thought no one was watching. It was as if her need for order stemmed from a deep-seated fear of chaos, a desperate attempt to keep some unseen force at bay. Whispers began to circulate, hushed tales of a past shrouded in secrecy. Some said she had suffered a great loss, a trauma that had left her clinging to control like a lifeline. Others spoke of a childhood marked by instability, a constant shifting of surroundings that had instilled in her a need for unwavering order. Whatever the truth, it was clear that Karen's need for control was more than just a personality quirk. It was a driving force, an obsession that threatened to consume not only her, but our entire community. Her tactics were insidious, subtle yet effective. She didn't just impose rules, she sowed discord, whispering doubts into ears, playing neighbor against neighbor. It was a calculated strategy, a way to keep us all off balance, ensuring that no one could challenge her authority. Social media became her weapon and her tool. With it, she spread misinformation, painting some in the neighborhood as villains, and elevating herself to some kind of savior. By dividing us, she solidified her control, turning our once harmonious community into a collection of isolated, wary individuals. The peace of our neighborhood, once a given, was now a distant memory, replaced by the ever-present tension of Karen's watchful eye. Karen's reign, once established, moved from subtle control to overt conflict. It began innocently enough, or so it seemed, with my decision to install an outdoor LED lighting system. After enduring weeks of Karen's increasingly stifling regulations, the festive season felt like a welcome respite, a chance to inject some joy into our regimented lives. The lights were tasteful, energy efficient, and most importantly, legal. I checked the HOA guidelines meticulously, anticipating some form of Karen's disapproval, but I was determined not to yield this time. The inevitable confrontation came swiftly. A sharp knock on my door, and there she stood, her face a mask of disapproval. "Those lights," she began, her voice tight, "they're excessively bright. They disrupt the neighborhood's aesthetic." "They're festive," I countered, striving for a calm tone, "and within the HOA guidelines." "Guidelines can be interpreted," she retorted, her eyes narrowing. Their brilliance is intrusive. They enhance security, I added, and bring a bit of cheer. Cheer is subjective, she snapped. Their removal is not. This initial exchange was merely the opening salvo. Karen escalated her campaign, leveraging the social media platforms she'd so effectively weaponized. My lights became a symbol of defiance, a rallying point for those frustrated with her oppressive rule. "Did you see Thompson's lights?" one neighbor whispered to another at the mailbox. "It's like living next to a stadium." Or, "I can't believe she's getting away with this. The neighborhood looks like a carnival." Karen fed these sentiments, amplifying discontent with carefully crafted posts while subtly directing the conversation. She had successfully made my lights a neighborhood issue, not just a personal one. Yet, within this climate of manufactured dissent, a countercurrent began to form. Those who'd grown weary of Karen's constant surveillance started to connect. Whispered conversations over fences, furtive glances in shared spaces. A silent network of resistance was growing. "We have to do something," Mrs. Peterson murmured as we stood beside our mailboxes one afternoon. "She can't keep doing this." "What can we do?" I asked, frustration evident in my voice. "She controls everything." "Not everything," Mr. Henderson interjected, joining us. "There are rules even she has to follow, and I think I found a few she's bending." Mr. Henderson, an unassuming man who kept to himself, had quietly begun documenting Karen's actions, uncovering discrepancies in HOA fund allocations and highlighting ignored maintenance requests. He wasn't the only one. Others, too afraid to speak openly, contributed information, feeding a growing sense of rebellion. There was something else brewing, too. A quiet, unassuming man, old Mr. Johnson, who lived at the end of the street, had a perfect view of everything that went on, and he loved to sit on his porch. He never talked much, but he seemed to notice everything. One evening, he simply nodded towards my house and Karen's, and gave me a knowing wink. It gave me chills, and a sense that there was far more going on than anyone realized. Karen's carefully constructed world was beginning to unravel, thread by painstaking thread, by the quiet acts of a community ready to reclaim its voice. The air in the neighborhood thickened with a sense of impending change, the quiet rebellion Mr. Henderson had initiated gathering momentum. Karen, oblivious to the undercurrents swirling around her, continued her campaign, her focus unwavering on my excessively bright lights. But fate, as it often does, has a way of turning the tables. The very night Karen decided to take matters into her own hands, venturing into my yard under the cloak of darkness to sabotage my lights, she unwittingly set in motion her own undoing. Her movements, captured by my security cameras, were meticulous. First, she unscrewed each bulb, a dark silhouette against the pale moonlight. Then, with a pair of shears, she severed the outdoor power supply. A sense of perverse satisfaction must have washed over her as she retreated, believing she had finally extinguished my defiant display. What she failed to grasp, however, was the interconnected nature of our neighborhood's electrical grid. Her act of sabotage triggered a surge in her own home, a surge that ignited her kitchen stove, left unattended. The irony was stark. Karen, the self-proclaimed guardian of neighborhood safety, had inadvertently set her own house ablaze. The fire, fueled by her unchecked arrogance, spread quickly, consuming her kitchen, a symbol of her controlled, ordered life. The next morning, the acrid scent of smoke hung heavy in the air, a stark contrast to the usual suburban tranquility. A crowd gathered, watching in disbelief as firefighters battled the flames licking at Karen's windows. Her meticulously maintained home, the bastion of her authority, was now a charred ruin. The investigation that followed was swift and damning. The insurance investigator, a sharp-eyed woman with a keen sense for detail, uncovered not only the deliberate disabling of Karen's own fire alarm system, but also the falsified claims she had submitted. "This isn't negligence, Mrs. Thompson," she stated, her voice cold. "This is fraud." The words echoed through the gathering, a collective gasp rippling through the crowd. The revelation of her fraudulent claims was the catalyst that brought Karen's carefully crafted facade crashing down. The Emergency Homeowners Association meeting that followed was a spectacle, a public reckoning for years of unchecked power. One by one, residents stood to voice their grievances, years of pent-up resentment spilling out into the room. Mr. Henderson presented his findings, detailing Karen's misuse of HOA funds, while Mrs. Peterson spoke of the constant fear of retribution that had permeated their lives. And then there was the silent but telling testimony of old Mr. Johnson, who produced security camera footage from his own porch, showing Karen's late-night excursion to my property. The vote was unanimous. Karen was stripped of her presidency, her reign of terror brought to a definitive end. But the humiliation didn't stop there. As the meeting adjourned, a police officer stepped forward, the glint of handcuffs catching the light. "Karen Thompson," he announced, his voice firm, "you are under arrest." The words hung in the air, a final, definitive punctuation mark on her downfall. The cheers from the gathered neighbors were deafening. Karen's house may have burned, but it was her reputation and standing in the community that turned to ash. With Karen's arrest, a palpable sense of relief settled over our community, a collective exhalation after years of stifled breaths. The atmosphere, once thick with tension, lightened as if a heavy fog had lifted. The reign of arbitrary rules and fear-induced silence was over. People emerged from their homes, not with wary glances but with genuine smiles and warm greetings. The neighborhood, previously fractured by Karen's divisive tactics, began to mend, its residents reconnecting like long-lost friends. The transformation was remarkable. Where once there was only the fear of Karen's ever-watchful eye, laughter now echoed through the streets. Children, once confined to their yards, now played freely, their joyous shouts a welcome contrast to the oppressive quiet of the past. The community bulletin board, once filled with Karen's pronouncements and thinly veiled threats, now displayed notices of neighborhood barbecues and impromptu gatherings. I, too, felt a renewed sense of freedom. The LED lights, now more than just a source of illumination, became a symbol of our collective liberation. With a renewed sense of purpose, I reinstalled them, even brighter this time, their warm glow casting a welcoming light over the street. It wasn't merely about the lights themselves, but about the reclamation of our shared space, the assertion that our community belonged to us, not to a self-appointed tyrant. The days that followed were filled with the spirit of camaraderie. Neighbors, who had previously exchanged only terse nods, now lingered in doorways, sharing stories and laughter. The sense of unity was profound, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of oppression. Even old Mr. Johnson, the silent observer, seemed to radiate a quiet satisfaction, a knowing smile playing on his lips as he watched the children play in the street. The lessons learned from Karen's downfall were not lost on us. We had witnessed the destructive power of unchecked authority, the corrosive effect of fear, and the liberating force of collective action. We understood that true leadership wasn't about imposing one's will, but about fostering a sense of community, of shared purpose. As the sun set on our rejuvenated neighborhood, casting a golden glow over the brightly lit street, I felt a deep sense of peace. We had weathered the storm, emerged stronger, more united than ever. We had learned that even the brightest lights can be dimmed by the shadow of tyranny, but that the human spirit, when united, can shine even brighter. And from then on, we would guard that light together.